Hello and welcome to the Survivor's Guide to Life on KPCA Petaluma 103.3 FM. I'm Jenny Stevenson, your host, and joining me is Dr. Peter Bernstein. Today we will continue in our series on how to survive through adversity. Dr. Bernstein, or Peter as he likes to be called, is a coach and mentor with 49 years of experience helping people survive and grow through trauma, struggles, and hard times, the stuff of real life. The goal of our series is to help you discover what we've experienced, that adversity is more than a trial to endure. It can be an exciting opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive.
That's true.
And I think it helps us to hear it too. I know I've said that.
It does. But when I hear that, I don't want people to think we're saying, well, you don't have to go through all the hard emotional ups and downs and difficulties and the challenges. We're not saying that. We're saying that even in the midst of all of that, there is hope. And that many times the purpose is, you'll find that a purpose will begin to emerge. It's hard to see, though, when the emotions are running really high. And usually when we're challenged, of course the emotion's going to come up. And for the time that you have to learn to deal with that, and we teach that too, so you can diffuse it and get out, your hope will come back, your clarity will come back. But when you're in the midst of it, it's very hard to keep it in mind. But you have to have something even more fundamental and basic, and that is a hope that things will get better eventually. And we're going to be talking more about that today. But, sometimes we need to hear from other people who have a better perspective.
That is something that I want to make sure we cover today. Let me just take a moment to let everyone know that we are probably concluding today a 3-part series on hope, practical hope, understanding hope. How do we have hope, create it, preserve it, hang on to it in the midst of very hard times? And for the last couple of episodes, Peter has kind of changed from being a co-host with me to a guest, a special guest, sharing from his personal experience and view of how to hang on to hope. And what Peter was mentioning just a moment ago is an essential part that I want to make sure we cover today. We maybe touched lightly on it the last couple of times, but this time I really want to have a chance to get into it, and that is, and again, let me just mention that kind of an overall topic today is how to have hope while living with uncertainty. That's another way to put going through difficult times.
Right.
And this key thing that you just mentioned ago is how important it is to have a support network.
That really helps. And I find that to have, and when we say support, people who are loving, supportive, and caring around you will make a big difference because they're more tuned in to what's happening. Usually they'll draw upon their own personal experiences too. And I was thinking about one of our people that works for us at our institute, Maritha, a Fijian. I call her a Fijian angel on our team. She's the only Fijian angel on our team. She's wonderful. And we were, I think it was Friday night or Saturday night, and we were going through some difficult, I was especially, about my wife, who's really on some pretty strong, extreme ups and downs through her deteriorating condition. And it certainly had built up and caught up to me. And I was hanging low. And, after supporting so many people all week and dealing with so many things, it hits me too. Especially when it's my time to just take a break. And Maritha was there. And then she said, and I said to her, I am really feeling low tonight. And just, I'm hurting. I just love my wife, Lynn, so much. And I'm watching this happen, and it's just breaking me apart. And she understood. She's lovely. And she was telling me, I didn't remember this, but she said, my first husband was a professional rugby player, and he was killed in a rugby match. And then she said, and she had a baby, or she was pregnant.
She has a son from that marriage.
Was that? Yeah.
Yes.
And she said, I waited 8.5 years before I'd ever have another relationship. And it's interesting because she married another, Peter, her husband. He was a rugby player, but he's not today. And he's boy, what a lovely, sweet man. Another angel.
Worth waiting 8.5 years.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I think so.
But she had such an empathy and was so sweet. And I needed it. Not that it made my pain go away, because I was looking at what was going on with my wife, and it made me so sad. And there's a thing called
ambiguous.
Ambiguous. God, I don't get the word.
It's a huge word.
I could have thought I could put another label on it, but ambiguous grief, where the person is still with you, and they're not gone yet, but yet the grieving, they're moving away. And the grief can be and it is very intense at times. And that's what I suffer from at times. Just devastating. And, but, it's funny, because I go through it, I deal with the emotions of it, and I know, here's the interesting thing, I know how to deal with my emotions. I know I would need some time to go cry or whatever to get rid of the emotions that have been built up. But I always know deep down, no matter what my emotions are distorting, and they always do, I know even further down that there is hope, and that this isn't going to last forever. Now, I'm not that rational all the time, but I just know from experience, I've been through so many hard times of my own, and helping thousands of people go through hard times. I know that there's going to be another day, and things will get better eventually. Interestingly, the next morning, Lynn was much better. It's like,
That roller coaster. Yes.
It just jolts me, but it makes my day. And I did feel much better, to be honest with you. I had a very good day the next day. And it just proves to me that, all's not hopeless, even though the situation is difficult and uncertain about when or where the end will take place. I know that there'll be another day. And even if of course I have to deal with my grief, because I adore her. Just absolutely the best woman in my life. 46 years of it. And as my friends that knew me growing up, she made a big difference in Peter's life, because he wasn't quite the same kind of person before, to say the least. And yet, the time that I've spent with Lynn and the impact she's had in my life have been dramatic. And it's such a blessing. And she's still, not just to me, to others that have contact, she's still an inspiration. I read it, people email me, send me testimonials about Lynn, that just every day.
I wanted to add that yes, Maritha has wonderful support and has the perspective and the empathy. You have had just an outpouring of support from people from your past. You have, and what has helped you have always kept in good touch with people, but what has kind of helped us lately is you have actually reached out for some help.
Yeah, that's usually, I'm the one who always helps everybody else. And I like it that way. But this time, sorry, this is my time. And we've had to deal with caregiving expenses, and we make sure Lynn's got everything she needs all the time. And I've been doing it now for a number of years. She's been sick now for, we've thought about it probably, 7, 8 years.
I think we didn't quite recognize what was happening in the beginning, but yes, it's been quite a while.
8 years.
Yeah.
But anyway, not as serious as it just was progressive. But it's been very costly, and I'd be willing to do anything. But I needed help to keep this up, and I would do it. She's the number one priority. And people have come out of my past with such loving testimonials and sending me money in, which we put in an account for Lynn's caregiving. But what's really interesting is people that we've helped in the past come out of the woodwork and are so grateful for what we did for them that they make donations with such a grateful heart.
Could you share some of that without, helping people still maybe stay anonymous if they want to be, but can you share some of these people that have come from your past that you've helped that are now coming back into your life?
Well, there's been a number of them, especially this week. But we've had some over the last month. I want to keep confidentiality, but one woman we helped who had her own business, very successful, but really had a lot of things we had to help her. She was really in pain and whatever, and we helped her. Was always so grateful for what we've done for her. And she would, time to time, she would leave us voicemails about how much it meant to her, the incredible work we did with her. And I think she was one of the first people to donate a nice amount to help Lynn out of gratitude for what we did for her. It was very sweet, very generous. And then lately, Lynn and I would help. There was a group home, a foster home. We used to have a little ranch in Nevada, and these kids are pretty. They've been abandoned, abused. They've been in and out of juvenile halls, and I mentored them. And they were a tough little lot, but compared to my life,
You used to be a tough little lot,
I
too.
know, and worse than they were. But
Yeah.
it was easy for me. I had a heart for them, and it was like raising them. And they weren't always easy to raise. But one fellow who really stuck close to us, Mike, a wonderful young boy, helped us so much. And he had a very rough, rejected life. I don't think I've seen him, so he's probably 46 years old. Oh, gosh.
Wow.
I don't remember.
That's some time passed.
A long, long time, probably
Yeah.
30 years. More. 35 years. And all of a sudden I hear from him about what Lynn meant to him and what I meant to him as a mentor. And interestingly, I heard from his girlfriend. Very nice.
Did you hear from him too?
Well, he left some notes,
You heard
emails
from both of
for
them.
Lynn. You're very sweet and
Yeah.
very grateful for the mentoring. He said I am his mentor, and he was so appreciative of what I did for him. Very sweet. But that's about it. And then I heard from his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Lovely woman, and he's so fortunate to have her. And she made a nice donation to help Lynn out of gratitude. Lovely. And then she also said, I think he needs more help. You need to talk to him. So we texted and I call him. But he's a good guy, and I'd be glad to. But she was deeply concerned for him, and she is one of those blessings that a God can have in his life. And that's what I told him. She's a blessing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, but that was a pretty dramatic one, because that came from a long time ago, from the people that you never, I told him, I texted him and I said, it's interesting, some of the most impressive people I've ever known have had such rough beginnings. And I said, you didn't know this, but I had rougher beginning than you did. And I never told you that, but I did. And that's why it was so easy for me to relate to where you were and what your needs were. And all of you, there were many of them. Some of them didn't make it. Some of them died. Heartbreak. But anyway, I helped them. Yeah. And they're appreciative to this day. It was really sweet.
Very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
You've been listening to the Survivor's Guide to Life on KPCA Petaluma 103.3 FM. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to the Survivor's Guide to Life. I'm your host, Jenny Stevenson. Today we are continuing to talk about hope, understanding hope, practical hope, how to have hope in difficult times. And in our first segment, we particularly started talking about, or Peter particularly started talking about, how important it is to have a connection with other people, friends, people from your past, people that you know now, kind of a support network.
Definitely.
People who have gone through hard times themselves, who have their own experiences that they can share and have empathy. And also, though, that since they're maybe not going through it right the way you are, they might have a perspective that will help you,
right,
that you don't quite have at this point. Let's talk about that just a little bit in terms of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, in fact, usually, as you said, when the emotions come up and we're having a hard time, we don't easily see the big picture. Sometimes we don't see this big picture. Sometimes we think that this is only happening to us. No one's ever had it this bad. We can get to that point. We end up losing track of our attitudes, our behavior, maybe even some kind of inner dialogue in our head, and we need some perspective from other people who know us and care about us.
Right. What we're talking about when you mention, excuse me, that inner dialogue. If you talk about when we begin to get so despairing and discouraged and hopeless, that isn't reality. That is our emotions speaking. And it's not the normal feeling state, which is different. And when people begin to listen to their emotions, you can count on losing your perspective. and sinking into an abyss of discouragement and despair and darkness. We know what that feels like. But I'll tell you the truth, we encourage people not to give their emotions such credibility, because you can be guaranteed that you're going to go down the wrong path if you let your emotions lead you. Not your intuition and your feeling state, but your emotions. So, but it can happen. I mean, those kind of things come up if you deal with intense emotion. Everybody feels those. I mean, who hasn't reached a point when they're really doesn't feel at some point, poor me, why me? I don't think that's an unusual state, some unusual clinical state. Everybody going through real hard times hits those points because the emotions are working on them. They're exhausted and depleted. Excuse me. Just getting over a cold, folks. Sorry.
Yeah, it's going to go
But anyway, it happens. So I don't think this is such a unusual, unique thing to go through. I just feel that when it's hitting, it feels you're so alone. You're so isolated. And what's going to happen? Everything looks so bleak and dark and hopeless and frightening. I don't see that as so unusual. The key really, though, is to make sure you know that there is going to be a better day. And that that this will end and better days will come. If you can't get to that place yourself, then you do need supportive people around you who have a broader, better perspective, that have empathy for what you're going through, but they also have a perspective where they're not drawn down quite so much, or that they've shared experiences with you in the past, and you with them, and you have a deeper appreciation and trust and love for one another, that when they talk to you, you can hear them, because they really do care and you know it. And they can give you the perspective that you can't get when your emotions are running so high, or you're so emotionally exhausted and depleted, or the situation seems like it's never going to end. We need other people around us. I think the thing about being around, loving people who care and share with you is an astounding gift that we all need. My life is surrounded by good people, loving people, caring, genuine people, which that's another thing we need to have. People who I've helped in the past, and they can help me. Now it's my turn. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, just out before we coming into, and the administrative secretary up front, she was talking about that, and I said, we all, all of us, even the helpers, like me, of course we're not immune. We don't live in a silo. I don't, and I'm glad I don't. So we all need help, and there's nothing wrong with it. But it's so nice to have a community. We live in a loving community. I am surrounded by love and empathy and caring and sharing. I go out to lunch at the local diner, and the girls behind the counter, lovely girls, and they know my wife, and they said, call us if you need us. We'll be there. Anytime your teams need us, we'll be there. I can't go any place without running into that kind of thing. It warms my heart, and they're beautiful young girls. I love them. They are so sweet and so genuine. And they said, we understand. We've been there. And they have in their own life, as young as they are. They've been through hard times, and they know the need. So that's really nice. I have a lot of that. There is one thing that's interesting that's happened lately, and I've had this happen for one. The world isn't all like that. And every once in a while I'll get a very abrupt, rude reminder. There are some mean, cold, heartless people out there who could care less. In fact, they look at your vulnerability as a way to take advantage, for their own benefit, and they're heartless and cold, and they're destructive. And when they come through, being in the vulnerable state I am and others are, when they're in that, it really gets to you. It shakes you up because they're not nice people and they don't care. I know they're out there. It's a painful reminder. They're out there too, and thank you God that I don't have much of that in my life. When it comes through, I don't like it. And yet I'm able to survive it and I'm able to deal with it, but I find it extraordinarily unpleasant. Those are the kind of people not to waste energy on. If you, as much as you can, get away from them. It's so important to be around people who care and love you.
I was just going to say that you have mentioned how much of a loving community we live in is, and that is true. But I want to add that it's not just that. Your priority has been to always have community, to relate to people, to connect with them, like the foster kids in your old neighborhood in Novato. You always have seen the value of relationships and community, and you have sought it out.
That is the truth. But I'll be honest with you, nothing like today. And you're right, I've always done it. But today is different. Today, and for quite a while, I really value the human-to-human connection. Like, I care about other people too. And they know it. And there's a genuine connectedness that I have in so many different ways in our community. I don't allow them to see me as Dr. Bernstein, the clinician. When they do that, I do everything I can to diffuse. Excuse me, to diffuse it, because I don't want that to get in the way. Not that I hemorrhage all over them with my own pain, but I don't want to have a barrier like that. It's not good for me, and I don't want them to use it against themselves. So that makes me superior to them. That means they're feeling inferior. I don't like that. So now that I'm going through this, I don't think I've ever been this. I've been broken in my life, but not like this. And this is one of the positive things that have come out of it. The purpose is to be so much better a human being, more genuine, more real, than I've ever been before. And I used to think I was before, but compared to now, my empathy now, there's no comparison to what I used to be like. I'm grateful. I am absolutely grateful. And I find that the openness, the humanness, the human connection, the genuineness is a bridge to healing. I really do. And I certainly look at it that way. It may be a little bit more emotionally up and down and rough at times, but the outcome is so much more hopeful and enriching and healing. And there will be hope in the future, and I know it. I have hope now, even in the midst of all the difficulties, and that's the truth. So, yeah, I do think it's very important. And it's interesting, the people that I grew up with, we all, not all of us, but I was in gangs, and our gangs were like our family. And it's an interesting thing how we went through a lot of hard times together, and we knew each other very well. That hasn't ever ended, because those people get in touch with me now with such love and understanding and appreciation. In fact, 2 of my friends from New Jersey are coming out on Thursday to see Lynn and me. Such sweet people. They weren't part of the gangs, by the way. I grew up with them, but they were the nicer folks. But we knew each other. In fact, Francine's coming out, and I remember when her mother committed suicide. We were 8th grade, 9th grade. But we all went through rough times together. Sandy, I remember, he's coming, that's her husband. And I remember his dad had a heart attack and passed away when he was 39. And I remember what Sandy went through and the changes it put him through. We all were there for each other in so many ways that we never forgot it. And not that I've ever, all these years, asked for help from my old friends. I haven't. And yet I am getting more emails, more calls, more texts, more loving messages of appreciation. Even for my birthday yesterday, people knew me, but I wasn't always such a nice guy. And some of these people were nice people. And they get in touch with me now by Facebook or email. And one of them said, I wish we would have known each other better when we were younger, because I've really grown to be fond of you and appreciate you and what kind of man you are.
A nice acknowledgement.
Sweet.
Nice
that was a birthday message,
yeah.
And that's sweet. She was too nice. She wasn't too nice for the
Too
world
nice
I was
for,
in.
For where you were then.
Yeah, no, she was a nice person. I remember her.
Yeah.
There were nice people in my life. I just wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
And then I hear stories about myself. It's always interesting to hear what I was like.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple of people tell me last week. I think Jenny was on one of the. She was listening to one of the
Oh, yeah.
calls.
Yes.
What was it? And it was Steve.
Yes, Gurn.
And he was telling me, no, everybody was afraid of you. You were like a dynamite keg ready to explode at any time.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I was. He says, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And he was right.
There's some perspective.
Yeah. And he was part of the rougher part of my life, but sweet.
Yeah.
And now he tells me what he was going through.
Yeah.
And I remember being there for him, and boy, he's living out the after effects of that today. And it breaks my heart because I was there and I know what he went through. So it's interesting how these things...
how valuable and meaningful it is to be able to share this with him now, all these years later, and to have both come as far as you have.
Absolutely.
And be able to go back and go, that was what was happening to us.
Right, and then Jenny gets to hear how we used to talk on the streets, because Steve doesn't care.
Yes.
He still thinks he's on the streets. And
He was relatively clean on that.
This time.
Yes.
This time I was amazed. He's actually cleaning up his language a little bit.
Yes. Okay. You've been listening to The Survivor's Guide to Life on KPCA Petaluma 103.3 FM. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to The Survivor's Guide to Life. I'm your host, Jenny Stevenson. In our last segment, we were talking about, in order to hang on to hope, how much it matters to have people in our life who love us and can have empathy, who can help us sometimes have a little bit more hopeful perspective on what's happening, can share we've shared experiences with them. We have trust, appreciation, I'm using Peter's words here, genuine connection, human to human, with a feeling of openness and gratitude, which can be a bridge to healing. I'd like to bring up something that you had talked about the difficulty in hard times of knowing always, not always being able to have control. And I don't know if I'm jumping a little bit here, but I know the kind of things that we were hoping to talk about today. And one of them was the perspective that we can get from those around us and those who are with us to help us accept, adjust to what's happening in our lives right now that we wish we could have control over and don't. It also can be another way of put it maybe is that we can get a perspective on the big picture, on what's happening and what we can do something about, what we can't, that other people have been in similar situations and can share their experiences around this. I know that you have served, like the young boy, the foster kid in Nevada. You were like a coach and a mentor to him, only it was a very informal, personal relationship, and that is your career now as a coach and mentor. And you've had people in your life who were coaches and mentors to you.
Definitely.
How have they helped you, or how is this helping you now to be able to kind of move through and accept the things that you can't change for Lynn?
Okay, so that's the question, right? Because you laid out a really good scenario there.
Yeah.
I know we've done a lot of talks on this, because when you're up against very difficult situations that there aren't immediate answers for, or the situations change a lot, like Lynn's, we're on a roller coaster, and that's not the only person we've had that to deal with. There is a point where you get to realize you don't have control, and you can't seem to find. You just don't feel like you can do enough for them, but they're in certain situations that no one can, and all you can do is make them comfortable, love them, protect them, and nourish them while they're on their journey to the end of their life.
I know that you've heard this so many times, and rightly so, from some of the staff at hospice that we're working with. They keep saying to you, you are doing so much, and you keep saying, but I wish I could do more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's an old scenario. And I think out of that developed a leadership role in my life that I have been a leader a long time in businesses and so many things that I do. Even if it's a benevolent leadership, I'm in a leadership role. Well, the truth of the matter is there's also a position of being in control, too. Even if it's benevolent, I'm in control. I like the strongman identity that I have. I certainly developed it over a long time. But when you're up against something that there is no answers for, in fact, the deterioration is so difficult that after a while, there is nothing else you could do. You've done everything you can. That's very difficult. You reach a point of brokenness. Most people that are helpers and caregivers, and that they do reach a point of feeling completely broken. In fact, and so distressed. And they don't have adequate responsiveness anymore. They have reactions, whether they're internal or not, but they're not very good. And as far as responsiveness goes, they've lost that capacity. You know, I used to think that was a bad thing. It certainly didn't feel good at the time. You know what really amazes me? What comes out of those times of vulnerability and brokenness? A deeper sense of gratitude, a deeper sense of humanity and appreciation, and an openness for others to come alongside you and offer you some perspective again, and lift you up and let you know that what you've been doing is good or not, or as hospice tells me, you've done more than anyone we've ever seen. Your teams are remarkable. They're so well trained, they're so caring and selfless, and they say it's a reflection of you, and you're right, I always say, but I just feel like if there's anything else I could do, I would do it. And as I'm saying that, I saw, do you remember the movie, The Schindler's List?
Yeah.
That was a good movie. Yeah, I thought it was a remarkably good movie. And in the end, Schindler had lost it. He gave everything to save, I think it was 1,700 Jews from the gas chambers, and he would have done more if he could. Mm-hmm. And he went through so much himself in order to save them and to come up against the Nazis and Hitler and whatever. And he was a remarkable man. He was a real hero. Well, in the end, when the liberation had come and the Americans had come, he had to leave. And I remember it was the departing scene with a couple of thousand Jewish people that he had saved. And he was a broken man. Not just broke, because he was a wealthy man, but he gave it all to help these people. But he was broken. And I remember he looked around and I remember he was talking to one of the people who was a Jewish man who was at his side as his assistant. And he looked at him and he said, I just feel like I could have saved some more. I feel like I just never did enough. And he was broken and in tears. And all the Jews, thousands, they were really waiting to say goodbye to him, were so loving and appreciative and encouraging and supportive, and were saying, you did everything you could more than anybody. You gave up everything you had to save all of us, and if you could have saved more, you would have. You did everything. And I remember the love, and this very aristocratic German man, who at one time had been tops in his industry and whatever, lost everything, gave up everything, left very broken. And I remember all the Jews were waving because he had to leave. And he left broken and in tears with nothing. But all of the people were there to say goodbye were so encouraging to him and said, you did everything, and we are so grateful. You will never be forgotten. You saved 2,000 people that would have been in the gas chambers. You gave up your fortunes. You put yourself in harm's way with Hitler and his henchmen, and you did it for us. He was an incredible man, actually.
And when you went to Israel, and you went to Vadishem, if I'm remembering that correctly, you saw a portion of that set aside as a memorial to Schindler.
I think it was called I don't know. Forgive me. The pathway of heroes, and it wasn't Jews. It were the people that saved Jews during Hitler's Holocaust. And Schindler, it wasn't. His memorial was there, but also in the movie was a beautiful. This was for real. A lot of the children of the survivors, at the end of the movie, went to his gravesite, and each one, and there were lines, thousands of them, I think it was thousands, would leave, this is what they do in Israel, on his tombstone, would leave a rock of commemoration. It was the most moving thing, because most of the people had died who he had saved, but some were still there, and they were being brought along with by their children and their grandchildren. And these were the real people. These weren't movie actors. It's one of the great movies. And they went to his gravesite, and I think that was in Israel. Forgive me. Yeah, it must have been, because that's the way they do it, with little rocks of commemoration. And it was a very touching time, and he felt that he had never done enough. And these were I think at the end of the movie, they said there were so many thousands of ancestors and children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the people he saved, and they all came. It was thousands. He saved 2,000, but thousands.
Oh, their descendants.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's a
yes.
beautiful movie. Anyway, but he never thought he did enough, and these people there were there to remind him and give him perspective during his emotional breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And he was carrying such a load. He finally let down.
Yeah.
He was broken. He was broke. He lost everything. And yet he went away an incredible hero to humanity.
He made such a positive impact.
Oh yeah, and there were excuse me, there are others. But this was his commemoration. Yeah. That's an emotionality that I know I have, nothing like Schindler, but I know I've felt that many times when I'm up against it and I feel at a loss, and my tough guy, strong man, successful person, leadership person is broken and can't find the answers for very difficult situations. I have come to that. I am very fortunate and blessed to have loving people around me. Just a lot of loving people who are right there, so supportive and encouraging, and they'll come to my side and they'll do what I can't do. And I'm so blessed about that. And then I have people who call me, and I have people on the street that talk to me, and I have emails and texts and Facebook all doing the same thing. I need it all. But interestingly, too, it helps me get over those emotional, despairing moments and to free up the energy that's being drained off.
I wanted to make that point, too, because there's a side of this, too, that, as you say, when you get to that broken place, sometimes something you have spent so much energy on and made no difference because it can't happen.
No.
And when you can get some perspective and you maybe shift, you can put your energy into something that you can make a positive impact with. And sometimes we need perspective for that too.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's the creative process and purpose to all of this. And I love it. And I live for that. In my whole life, I've been doing that my whole career. Being creative. And when one thing doesn't work, finding new ways. But you have to free up the energy that's being drained off into hopelessness and despair and discouragement and emotionality, and come back to yourself, because you need that energy to find things that you can do, new ways of approaching a problem, and becoming responsive again, not reactive, and looking for new ways and new solutions for difficult problems that you didn't even see before, or hadn't really come to the surface yet. But it takes energy, and you need to be present for that. So to me, you have to really let go of what doesn't work. You have to accept the brokenness and the support and love. I really encourage people to learn to deal with their emotional selves, because if they don't, their bodies will not hold up under the distress, and I know how that feels too. But the beauty of it is, it won't last for a long time. You'll be able to get rid of it, and you'll be able to pull yourself together and begin to focus on positive possibilities for what you can do now.
I want to pause right there because that is important. I want people to be left with that and to have thought for a
Absolutely.
moment. You've been listening to The Survivor's Guide to Life on KPCA Petaluma 103.3 FM. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to The Survivor's Guide to Life. I'm your host, Jenny Stevenson. We are, again, talking about hope, and in our last segment, we talked about the issue of control,
Mm.
and times when we've done all we can in very hard times
Mm-hmm.
and have come to the end of our own abilities, and have people step in to help us get some perspective, to step in and help where we are no longer able to help us to understand how if we've done so much and we don't see that we have done so much,
Mm-hmm.
and to help us get a better read on where we really are and what we've really accomplished,
Right.
and to help us let go of what doesn't work and try to find new solutions, be creative, put our energy where it can have a real impact.
That's putting your energy where you shift, and that's the beauty of it. Where you're going to have a real impact in the present.
Right.
And it's a step-by-step process. And you need to free yourself up from that abyss of hopelessness, despair, discouragement, emotionality in order to do this. And if a situation like caregiving, or you're helping someone, or dealing with very, very overwhelming, difficult situations, you've got to free yourself up, because you're going to have to deal with a new situation in new creative ways that you didn't even think about before. I find that my whole career has been made up of situations like that. I live for that. If there's a purpose to difficulties and challenges, it's learning how to grow and learning how to certainly be more empathetic, but to be creative. And all of a sudden, new solutions begin to come to mind and come to surface. I love that. I live for stuff like that, and I have for a long time.
You talked about strategies and reframing and learning from the challenges, and that's what you're talking about right now.
Absolutely. And if you look at it that way, that's a pretty positive perspective on difficult situations. You know, we're talking about reframing, and I'm thinking about now, what would that mean? What would that look like?
It is kind of a jargony word. What does that mean to you?
It's another word for reframing. In other words, something that normally would have been very negative, it's almost like changing how you begin to see something in a more positive way. I'll tell you something you mentioned inner dialogue before. I'll tell you reframing. When our inner dialogue and that critic starts working on us, and you're tired and exhausted, and you need some time for yourself when you're taking care of others in difficult situations, there's that little voice will tell you you're being selfish again, or you're not a very caring person, or whatever. And the way to reframe that really is, it's not called selfishness, it's called self-care. And with self-care, it's a necessary component of giving to others, helping others, dealing with difficult, overwhelming situations like first responders do. You have to begin to reframe. And one of the important components, and this is hard to come by when you're in the midst of helping others or difficult situations, is to take some time for yourself, to restore yourself, to get some rest, to get away a little bit. For me, it doesn't take that much at all. But it makes a big difference, it really does. That's reframing to me. That's one of the reframings. I know there's a lot of others, but that's the one that comes to mind for me.
I want to make sure, we had one other thing that we wanted to have a chance to talk about, and we're in our last segment, so if it's all right, I'd like to just ask you about this one, bring this one up. And that is something else that we can gather from perspective from those who are around us, love us, know us, can give us some support. And that is in the area of, as you mentioned a moment ago, purpose or priorities or what really matters. As we go through hard times, sometimes, especially when we've lost hope, we don't know anymore how this could have any lasting impact for good in our life, what it might have anything to do with a purpose for our life, or taking a look at priorities and what really matters in our life, which maybe we're just going to lose touch with all of that completely. We've lost it. How does this happen? How is it that we can draw on loving relationships to find some purpose and some...
Well, sometimes we need some people
priorities
to remind us that aren't so emotionally involved and drawn down by it, and who know us, to offer us some new views on things that are a little broader and a little bit more removed and encouraging and positive that we just can't see anymore. We're too close to the fires. The flames are just too high. We need that. But I was thinking, as you're talking, I was thinking about another part of it that means so much to me now. Number one is certainly there's going to be another day, and there'll be hope tomorrow, even if it feels bad today, and I find that over and over again. You will have your victories, and they'll feel really good. They may not be long-lasting, huge, but boy, they sure feel it at the time. I love those, and I love victories like that. I've had some today, and I've been thrilled. But the other part of it that I was thinking about is a deeper gratitude and appreciation for the things in life that they may not seem like big things, but when you're in this state, you develop this deep gratitude and appreciation and respect for others and caring for others. But that appreciation is just the only word I can think of. It's just awesome. And knowing how I used to be, I can use myself because I know how I used to be. It took a lot more than a little thing to make me feel grateful. And it took a trip to Tahiti or Hawaii, and I'd go there all the time, and or Fiji or wherever I went. But we went to a lot of, but or fast cars. Still like fast cars. But it's really interesting today, or fast horses, or good cutting horses. I don't need to do that. I can feel grateful for the littlest thing, and just my heart will soar with appreciation and gratitude. Perfect example was lately, but I've had a number of them lately. But last night was a very difficult night for my wife. We were taking care of her. I didn't know where we were going, what was going to happen. But we couldn't reach her. She was inaccessible. And I just sunk like a stone. And I had personally a good cry. I was upset. But I knew there'd be another day. And I did a good night of rest, or the best I could. And I woke up this morning. And I went in to see how she was. She was smiling, sweet. She was awake, ready to get up. When I say get up, folks, I don't mean like a normal getting up. Just to open her eyes.
Ready to start her day.
Ready to start her day.
Yeah.
And she had the sweetest smile and appreciation. And she was engaging with me in such a lovely, sweet way. And that made my day. I'll tell you, no matter what came out after that, and I had a few things that weren't easy, not with her, but other things. It would be really hard to shake my tree after that. I was so glad to see her breathing and her eyes open and being engaging. And I remember yesterday was my birthday, and I really wasn't into celebrating. My gift now is taking care of others and seeing them do better. But I probably took away some sweet moments for people who wanted to show appreciation to me. I just wasn't really receptive. But this morning I looked at these cards, and I so many profoundly acknowledging cards. And I shared them with Len, and I read them, and she could hear them. And she was so touched, I could see it. And she listened, and she was engaged with me. That made my day. And after that, I ran into a few rough things, and I don't like those, not with her, with other things. And it was like my warrior self was there too. Folks, that doesn't just disappear. But, I knew with being a warrior, when you have to walk away from certain things that are defeat, and there's nothing you can do about it, but it doesn't mean I like it. But it turned out that some of the things that I thought were a defeat turned out to be a victory. And I got to tell you, I was stoked. And I felt good, because where I felt beaten by some heartless people and that doesn't push my good buttons, but it breaks my heart that people could be that cold and unloving, but they're out there. But you know what? Sometimes you can't defeat them. You got to just walk away and accept the defeat. So I looked at it and go, okay, that's the way it is. But I knew inside I wasn't happy about it. I didn't think there was much to do. Turned out that we could redeem, and we could come to a very strong place of victory. I can't tell you how happy I was, and relieved and grateful. And it gave me new hope again to go, even when I think everything's lost, it's not. I may not have the perspective, but other people do. And it was the people in another state, Florida. They're the ones that came to my side. And one is a surgeon friend of mine, Yehuda, an Israeli surgeon who I love in Florida. And they came to my side.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me. And I got calls from other people there and said, you were right, and you're not defeated. And this is what really happened. And I want to tell you, I was one happy camper.
Yeah.
But it's the moments of gratitude and appreciation, heartfelt, that means so much now. It could be the littlest thing, but boy, does it mean a lot.
It means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We just have a couple more minutes left, and I want to go back to something you mentioned a moment ago, and that is that yesterday was your birthday, and instead of thinking about receiving gifts, you said that right now a gift for you is to take care of others and see them get better. And that brought up one of the things we have talked about, and a point I hope we can leave people with today. And that is the experience, the learning that pain without purpose leaves people helpless and hopeless feeling.
Right.
But pain with purpose can lead to hope and resilience.
Absolutely the truth. That's a great note to end on. And to leave people with that today, please keep that in mind during your tough moments. And also, I'm glad that we're doing this, that we can be here for people all over the world that are in need, and I hear from them. And I hear how much that what we're doing means to them, but it's coming from a very heartfelt, it's coming from our
purpose.
Our
what
purpose.
we're doing here today and every day on the
right.
podcast is part of our purpose.
Absolutely.
To reach out and give hope.
And I'll tell you, it's really wonderful for us. We call it Lynn's Legacy. And I'm telling you, I never had as much empathy as I have now. So I'm grateful that we can do this. I love this show. We've done 57 episodes.
This is number 57.
And I expect to continue to do them for a long time. And I hope that we reach more and more people in need. Please listen to our show because I think you're going to be able to get something out of it for yourselves and carry it for a while. But we'll bring up other things. And, you know, if you don't get it this time, there'll be many other episodes you can get. And if this one doesn't work, you can always go back on.
And you can always let us know.
And let us know. I'd really like to.
If what we're saying is not making sense or you have questions, you can always let us know. We would love to know that.
That's right.
Yes.
I would. We would.
Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
The Survivor's Guide to Life is made possible through a grant from Sonoma Coast Trauma Treatment, a 501c3 public charity that relies entirely on donations from people like you. If our podcast and the information that we provide benefits you or someone you care about, please consider supporting us by giving to Sonoma Coast Trauma Treatment. Donations are tax deductible. You can go to the website, which is sctraumatreatment.org. sctraumatreatment.org. We would love it if you'd also support us on social media. You can like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram. For more information about our podcast, you could contact, or if you'd like to contact Dr. Bernstein or myself, our number is 707-781-3335. Thank you for listening, and just appreciate all of you out there.
Don't forget we're on YouTube too, televised.
We're on YouTube. Our videos are on YouTube. Yes. Thank you.